bowing in reverence, and we're surrounded by the glory of your presence. With every creature, every tongue, we're lifting our hearts to the glorious one. Yeah, glorious one, glorious one, light of the world, you outshine the sun, King of all kings, eternity sings, glorious one. God of infinite worth, with hands that carved out the ocean, you hold the universe, and still you run to the broken. With every heart that's been set free, we're lifting our song to our glorious King. Glorious one, light of the world, you outshine the sun, King of all kings, eternity sings, glorious one. There is none more beautiful. There is none more wonderful. Yeah, glorious one, light of the world, you outshine the sun, King of all kings, eternity sings, glorious one, light of the world, you outshine the sun, King of all kings, eternity sings, glorious one, Jesus, you're the glorious one. For the day, for the light, for the world revolved around the sun. God high stepped down into time, wrote the story of His love for everyone. He has filled our hearts with wonder, so that we always remember you and I are made to worship, you and I are called to love.
whatever you want to do whatever you want to. Here is where I lay it down. Every
I fall apart, you're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you, oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. I want defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Sin runs deep, your grace is more. Your grace is found, is where you are. Where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. So teach my song to rise to you when temptation comes my way. When I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. You're my one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. For those of you that may have missed the announcement up to this point, or maybe you just forgot, we're going to take communion today as a body, even as we're spread out all over the state, even the country, watching right now. So we're going to give you just a couple minutes, if you forgot, to go get what you need. Run to the kitchen and grab bread and juice, or whatever you're going to use in place of those. There's just a symbol, so it doesn't have to be grape juice. It doesn't have to be bread. It could be a cracker and water if that's what you got. But we're going to do that together at the end of the message today. So we're going to give you a couple minutes just to go grab that if you need it, so you don't miss anything, and then we'll continue.
you've gathered all of your bread and your drink, will you pray with me over the elements? Jesus, we thank you for the gift of love. We thank you for your obedience to your Father and laying down your life so that we could find it. Right in this moment, we're asking you to come and be present and meet us in our own homes as we partake in this beautiful celebration of what you have done for us. We love you so much. Thank you for this moment.
Through sickness and in health, in joyful times and in times of sadness. Happy birthday!
Good morning, everyone. It is just awesome to have you tune in today. And for an entire month now, we have been talking through the Old Testament book of Ecclesiastes. And we've been using this title, The Meaning of Life. And I just want to take a second to say thank you. Thank you for those of you who have been listening along to Ecclesiastes or reading along just as a way to supplement the themes we've been hitting these 5 weeks. For those of you who have sent me messages and emails, I haven't gotten to respond to all of you, but I just want you to know how big a difference that makes, how much that means to me personally. And this is the last week, so I'm excited. For those of you who maybe hear me say that and you're thinking to yourself, you know what, maybe you're tuning in for the very first time or you're tuning in on the last week of the series and you're thinking to yourself, you know what, there I go again. I just missed another opportunity. I really want you to hear me. You didn't miss an opportunity. You can pick up the Bible today and read Ecclesiastes. You can pick up the living Word of God today and interact with Him and get to know Him better. So don't allow any sort of regret to keep you from this day going forward. Do something different that actually changes things. Now, for our final theme, I want to talk to you about something that really grabbed my attention the very first week of the series. I'd been listening to it every day for about a week, and it really grabbed me because there were some things that I heard about this theme that were common things that I've heard before, but there were some other things, some unique and unexpected things that I heard as well, which is really typical, isn't it, to this book of Ecclesiastes. And so the theme that I want to talk about today is words from the wise. Words from the wise. I want to answer the question, what do wise people do with words? Words coming to them, words coming from them, words that they are tempted on the fly to sort of, just sort of let go. And, we all deal, I think, with these issues every day, right? We all deal with words. We all use words. And sometimes it's a little more intense, right? There's some days where maybe we really feel like we should or we want to say things. And other days are a little less intense. And here's the other thing. Every one of us has significant room to grow in this area, right? Like I do. None of us has arrived here. None of us is perfectly wise in all the ways that we use our words. And so all of us can do better. And that's why I think today can help. And so today, this is all about how wise people handle words. Kind of like a sword, right? We want to wield words well with wisdom and with success. And I was thinking about that this weekend. Sort of right at that time, Tracy Kaufman sent me this little video that had a reading, and I just want to read the poem for you guys right now because it's just such a beautiful way to kick off this final week. And the title is, "It Depends Whose Hands It's In." A basketball in my hands is worth about $19. A basketball in Michael Jordan's hands is worth about $33 million. It depends whose hands it's in. A baseball in my hands is worth about $6. This will be a little dated. A baseball in Mark McGuire's hands is worth about $19 million. It depends whose hands it's in. A tennis racket is useless in my hands, but a tennis racket in Serena Williams' hands is a championship-winning thing. It depends whose hands it's in. A rod in my hand may keep away a wild animal, but a rod in Moses' hands will part the mighty Red Sea. It depends whose hands it's in. A slingshot in my hands is a kid's toy. A slingshot in David's hand is a mighty weapon. It depends on whose hands it's in. A fish and 5 loaves of bread in my hands is a couple fish sandwiches. But 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread in God's hands will feed thousands. It depends whose hands it's in. Nails in my hand might produce a birdhouse, but nails in Jesus Christ's hands would produce salvation for the entire world. It depends whose hands it's in. As you see now, it depends whose hands it's in. So put your concerns, your worries, your fears, your hopes, your dreams, your families, and your relationships in God's hands. Because it all depends on whose hands it's in. Let's pray. God, today, help us to do a better job of placing literally every aspect of our lives in your hands. And God, when you place things back in our hands, or you place words in our minds or our mouths, help us to wield them well, with wisdom, in ways that bear fruit, that bring unity, and bring success. We ask these things together today in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so I want to give you guys 4 things. 4 things about words from the wise. Are you ready? Just John and everybody online. I know everybody online. Okay, here's the first one. Words from the wise are few. Words from the wise are few. Now, some of you may have heard this or remember this. When I was a kid, I had teachers who would say this, and it always stuck with me. Better to have people think you're a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. Right? So the less you say, like the less evidence people have to prove that you're foolish. Bethany's grandma, who was awesome, I just loved, glad that I had many, many years to get to know her, had a great way of saying this. Here's what she would say: always tell the truth, but you don't always got to be telling it. Right? Like, if someone asks you if you're saying something, it should always be truthful, but just because you got some truth in you doesn't mean you always have to open your mouth and say it. Sometimes it's best to keep your truth to yourself. And sometimes likely rolls around more than we think that it does, right? Like, it's just good to keep things to ourselves. Now, this is how Ecclesiastes tells us this. It's Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 1 and 2, and the text says this: as you enter the house of God, keep your ears open and your mouth shut. It is evil to make mindless offerings to God. Don't make rash promises, and don't be hasty in bringing matters before God. After all, God is in heaven, and you are here on earth. So let your words be few. So just a few ideas there, right? Keep your ears open and your mouth shut. Just like James 1:19, we've been talking a lot about this the last year, right? Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. The text then says, don't make rash promises. In the New Testament, Jesus tells it to us this way, that we should count the cost, right? Before you build, count the cost. If all you can get is a foundation and you can't build anymore, people will make fun of you. Before you go to war, if you don't have enough troops to defeat someone else, you're going to try to get peace. We need to count the cost before we speak as well. So the text says, let your words be few. Say less, speak less, talk less. And if every one of us would employ these simple ideas, we would all be better off. See, most people only ever talk and never listen. And when someone else is talking, we're not listening, right? We're just waiting for our next term to verbally vomit on them again. And for those of you who would like to point out that the Ecclesiastes here is talking about when approaching God and not talking about dealing with others, so maybe it's different, let me add one more verse just so you know the context here is very broad. In the very next chapter, Ecclesiastes 6:11 says this, the more words you speak, the less they mean. So what good are they? The more we speak, the less meaning our words have. If you're a talkative extrovert like me, these can be painful words to grapple with, right? Just painful ideas because you're like, man, I'm always talking. I always have something to say or a story to tell or an idea. But here is a solidly biblical truth. If you have a lot to say and are always saying it, you are not wise. If you run your mouth a lot, you may be a great friend, an incredible salesperson, just a world-class motivator, great at many things, but the one thing you are not, at least biblically speaking, is wise. Because wise people listen first. Wise people speak significantly less. And almost always, wise people speak last. It's just true. So a question for us. Do you speak more than you should? It's a good question, right, about that first one, right? Like words from the wise are few. Do you, do I, do we speak more than we should? While some may be better or worse at this to begin with, nobody starts where they need to be, right? None of us is awesome at this. We all begin as children, but hopefully we mature. And so I want you to know you can grow in this. You can get better at this. This isn't sort of a pronouncement on where you are, but maybe a good starting point for you. One of the things I've tried to do for years now, and sometimes I do better and sometimes I do worse, when I'm in meetings, as opposed to walking into a meeting and telling everybody my thoughts, I try to ask questions and let other people talk first. Because I've realized sometimes if I get to a meeting and I say what I think, people who think other things may not feel comfortable to speak. So it's wise, again, to talk the least and to talk last. So I just want you this morning to think maybe of one step you can take to grow in your wisdom by saying fewer words. And maybe even jot that note down, make that note in your phone, and later today, think about that a little bit and come up with a step you can take. All right, here's the second thought. Words from the wise are followed by action. They're followed by action. Wise people, when they say things, they follow that by doing things. And when they're not going to do them, they don't say them. I think this is something that plagues the church as well, right? We say a lot and we do significantly less. We've got to live the word, not simply preach the word. Some of you may have heard this quote before. Nobody knows how much or cares how much you know until they know how much you care. But how in the world do people know how much we care? It's by how we live. It's by the things that we do. Look at how Ecclesiastes reinforces this in Ecclesiastes 5, verses 4 and 5. When you make a promise to God, don't delay in following through, for God takes no pleasure in fools. Keep all the promises you make to him. It's better to say nothing than to make a promise and not keep it. See, making a promise and not following through is foolish. So when you and I make a promise to God, or even otherwise, do not delay in following through. Don't make a promise and then hope that somehow in the future you'll figure it out. Do it, and do it quickly. See, words and actions are two sides of the coin of a wise person's life. And it's easy to see why actions have to accompany words. But I think sometimes maybe we wonder, well, but why do words have to accompany actions? I mean, if we're doing good things, if we're doing right things, do I have to talk? And I think that really words may in some instances be less important, but you still have to have both. It's like that great quote, right? Preach the gospel every day. If necessary, use words, right? Our actions are so important, but we need words too. And I remember this great story, and I've told it a number of times, but it's significant. So if you were looking out your window and you saw a road crew show up there, and maybe you just lost a job or were between jobs or underemployed or whatever, and you're like, perfect opportunity. So you walk out your garage and you put on a little vest and you grab a shovel and you walk out, and every day you walk out there and you work from the time they start till the time they end, right? And a week later, when the foreman's handing out checks and you get in line and you're sort of walking forward and you get there and they say, well, hey, what's your name? And you give your name. Is there going to be a check for you? Of course not, right? Because you were never hired. There were never any words. That's important too. You see, sometimes people think, well, I'm a good person, so that's enough to get me to God. It doesn't work like that. There's got to be a relationship. There's got to be a connection. There's got to be words. The book of James in the New Testament, written by the half-brother of Jesus, James tells us that words without action are dead, meaningless, and dead. So, when you talk, is it backed by action? What an important question, right? I mean, do you maybe have the gift of the gab, a silver tongue from birth? So for you, it's fun, it's easy, it's natural to talk. What have you said? How have you inspired that left others or even God waiting around for something you said but never did? So maybe a question here for this second idea. How are you going to add action to your words and increase in wisdom? See, what is one thing you're going to circle back around to and do because you said you would, right? It could have been years ago, but you told someone you were going to do something and you never did it. And you want to grow in your wisdom. You want to follow your words with action, and so you're going to do this. The first week of this series, I had somebody who just serves their brains out for Jesus here at New Hope. They sent me this in a message. I thought of this morning as I pulled into the church parking lot and noticed the missing shingles on the first rental house. I'm not able to do that right now. Someone else was going to do it, but they dislocated their elbow, which is a horrible and traumatic injury. The few of us can't keep doing everything. Someone is going to have to step up. And then use the reference from Ecclesiastes, when the keeper of the house tremble and strong men stoop, when men are afraid of the heights of the dangers in the streets. I know jobs, families, and life complicate the issue, but I really don't see anyone waiting in the wings to take the baton. The maintenance team isn't the only ministry where the same, mostly core group carry 90% of the load. Hopeland, the guards, the greeters, really everywhere, have historically been undermanned. You know, we all have incredible opportunities to follow our words with our actions and not only increase in wisdom, but make a bigger difference in doing that as well. Here's number 3. Words from the wise go unspoken. This is an interesting one, right? This is when something occurs and we really want to say something. And sometimes it's worse, right? Like we really need to say something. It's like burning a hole in us. Has anyone ever done this? Have you ever seen something on Facebook and you feverishly, actually it's usually like this, right? You like type a response, and just as you're about to hit send, either because like the Spirit of God has given you wisdom, or maybe you like ask your spouse or significant other about it and they're like, don't do that, right? And then you like go, delete. And has anyone ever done this besides me? Right? Like I literally do this all the time. It's like, ah! And then it's like, well, I said it, but I'm not going to say it like to everyone, so delete. And I feel a little bit better. Listen, if you're like, I don't know what that's like because everything I type, I hit send, you need to hear this point. Right? This is a significant thing for you. And some of you were like, Rob, I understand what you're saying, and I need to do better, but I just had to. I would have burst if I hadn't said something. And this reminds me, I told you guys this story before. When I was in elementary school, I remember going to the principal's office with some of my friends. I think we were fighting or something like that. And the principal let me tell my version of the story first. And then the next guy got to go, but he was messing it all up, and I couldn't help myself, and I jumped in, and I jumped in again, and I was warned, and I was warned, and I was told, in this tiny little office, Rob, if you can't keep your mouth shut, I'm going to send you to the corner, which was literally, the office was so small, it was literally like this. Like that was like the corner, right? And I couldn't help myself. I had to say something, and I got sent to the corner. Now, so I know this feeling, but I also want you to know I have mostly been able to control it after growing out of being a child, right? Like we should be getting better at these kinds of things. This is a unique contribution from Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes 10:20 tells this to us. Never make light of the king, even in your thoughts, right? Not even words, even in your thoughts. And don't make fun of the powerful, even in your own bedroom. For a little bird might deliver your message and tell them what you said. Don't make light of the king, even in your thoughts, even in what you think. Doesn't Jesus tell us this, right? That what we think is important? That even thinking about a woman lustfully is sin, right? Like what happens in our thoughts matters. And don't make fun of the powerful, even in your bedroom. That the most secret and confidential of places, right? The one place we're supposed to get a pass. Not even there. Don't even do it there. Why? Why does the text say this? I remember years ago, a family that wanted, like it was like this emergency, they had to meet with me. And so I met, it was a very awkward, strange time. I think I had a wedding even that afternoon. And they met with me because they had a couple serious complaints. And they knew that their complaints were real because on the way home from church, their daughter also complained about the same thing. So after this conversation, it was literally like, so the thing your children hear you complaining about all the time, they're saying those things too? And you think that that makes them real? You don't think that when we have poison that we actually spread our poison to others? It's how it works, isn't it? And then I told a story before, but I remember when we lived in Michigan, I got a call from a pastor on staff at my church, and he asked a question about this event we were having, and asked a question about an individual who was just a wounded, broken person who acted in wounded, broken things. And I honestly, with not much embellishment, answered his question outside the building when this event was going on, not realizing that somehow she had snuck outside and was hiding in the bushes and overheard this. And to this day, now 15 or so years later, she still probably wouldn't speak to me. So whether it's someone hiding in the bushes or a little bird or whatever, people find out what we say. They just do. And so question, have you learned to hold your tongue? Have you learned to do this? Can you let things go unsaid? Can you set aside your thoughts and opinions for the good of the whole? See, wise people aren't just careful about what they do say, they're careful about the words that they don't say as well. Here's the last one. Words from the wise go unlistened to. Words from the wise, they go unlistened to. Now, this is another unique one from Ecclesiastes. This isn't about people not listening to what we say, even if we're wise. The truth is that there are wise things that people ignore all the time. And there are foolish things that people embrace. That says more about them than it does about us. But hear this, just because people are listening to us does not make us wise. That's not how that works. This is about who and what you and I choose to listen to and even seek out to hear. Listen to Ecclesiastes here, but I want you to know I added an extra verse on the front just to ground us before my point. So here's these three verses. Ecclesiastes 7, verses 20 through 22. Not a single person on earth is always good and never sins. So that's the grounding verse. And then here's the point. Don't eavesdrop on others. You may hear your servant curse you, for you know how often you yourself have cursed others. Ouch, right? Like a kind of a gotcha here. Because we've all messed up. Doesn't Jesus tell us, he who is without sin cast the first stone? And as that adulterous woman was on the ground, right, and the religious people had those stones, that wasn't Jesus' way of saying, pick whoever's doing the best and let that guy throw the first one and the rest of us will pile on. No. It wasn't Jesus' way of saying, get her. It was Jesus' way of saying, everyone here except for me, you are her. So if you want to stone her, we've got to stone all the rest of you as well. So don't eavesdrop. Don't do that. When I was a kid, my mom always said I couldn't sort of not know. And so when I was a little kid, if we had friends over, the place in our house where people would congregate at the time was our kitchen. And there was like my bedroom, a tiny hallway, and then that went into the kitchen. And so there were only maybe 10 feet from my bedroom door to the kitchen table where people would sit, maybe a little bit longer, a little more. But I literally would wait until like everybody was done checking on me, and I would slowly sneak out of bed, and I would crawl across the floor